Okay, so these are my language plans for this week. Because I should underline it. And looking more at the little mini lessons, so where we're going to be going. So on Monday, I've got out some provocations for songwriting. And I'm also going to get what was I going to say? What else am I going to get? Oh, I'm also going to get the xylophones. I was like, hold on a second, what do I want? I'm also going to get the xylophones from up in the music area, a couple of xylophones, and a couple of boom whackers. It's a new word that I learned, by the way. It is actually a musical instrument, which I didn't know. And using them to actually create some music, but help with how we can kind of write the song and then perform the song and kind of look at the connection between the two. So, writing first and then performing, and how could they go together, and kind of getting the students to think a little bit in terms of what they could create and how it might sound and what words might go with them and how they might be able to use words that they already know to add to it. So I'm kind of eager to see what they produce with it and how they get it down in a written form. On Tuesday, it's going to be a little bit different because we're going to have the Remembrance Day Assembly in the morning, from my understanding. So I think that that's going to take up a chunk of the morning. I'm going to try to add my math then after that, and I'm going to try to do a mini or writer's workshop at the end of the day, because I'm going to have a supply teacher in. So I'm thinking that this is more of a routine for them, so probably better for a supply teacher. So I'm going to have the supply teacher in, and we will look at doing that at the end of the day, because I'm at the NTEP committee meeting on that day, so in the afternoon. So we'll do that instead, and then I'll probably leave it with some of the same provocations from the day before, but just kind of extending the writing piece. So I'm thinking something likely around the concept of the details, because this is usually where we're continuing to go, is how can you add a few more details, or even just kind of looking at the concept of like a poetry kind of thing, because I'm thinking that that just lends itself so nicely to the concept of music that I wonder if we could even kind of explore that. So it might even be with the thought of something with poetry and kind of that connection to music piece that comes with that too. So I'm going to do a little bit of thinking and then come up with one for the supply teacher for Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday, I want to get into our Wonder Wednesdays. Kind of been inspired by a grade 8 teacher over at Ancaster Meadow, a friend of mine, Joanne, and what they've done on Wonderopolis. And I would like to try that in a modified version with the grade 1s, and looking at how we can ask questions. So the asking of questions is going to be kind of the focus for this, and what would the questions look like, and kind of using Wonderopolis as an inspiration to get students kind of thinking about some questions that they might like to find out. And then we'll follow up with that in the middle block as well, in terms of trying to answer the questions together and looking at some question options. And in fact, the nature table piece might actually lend itself to some questioning as well. So I've got to look at that option too. On Thursday, I'm thinking that I didn't really get as much into the speech bubbles last week as I wanted, but I do know that students do seem to be adding some characters where they're starting to look, kind of getting that dialogue going. So I'm thinking, because of the interest, that we start looking at how they can add to that dialogue and really kind of go with the point of view piece, and then how we can put it together in a comic strip for some writing. So trying to actually create one together and looking at options for that, and how the students can then go and eventually hopefully publish their comic strips. And that's where I would like to look into some iPad apps for that, but with the understanding of creating the comics. So I do have something to look at for comics, and I like to kind of look at that. This week I held off on it. I had done it for earlier, didn't quite get there because it didn't really align with where the students were at that point, but now I think it's closer to aligning where they're at, and we could really kind of delve into it this week as well. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I'd really like to get into Wonder Wednesdays. I'd like to use the Wonderopolis website. and get the students kind of looking at some of the questions that are there, and then us trying to figure out how could we figure out the answers to a question, and then how could we share our learning, because that's what I'd like to do. I kind of like the answering to the question to be something that we do together, and then go into sharing the learning as something that the students kind of do on their own. So together being like the full group, but then on their own or with like a partner for the sharing of the learning. So then one or two people for the sharing piece, so that they either work alone or as part of a group. And for this first one, I think I'd like to try it together and then kind of move from there. The other thing is I think we're really getting into the idea of adding some more sight words. And I'm noticing more and more that that we kind of need to be heading towards a little bit more with our sight words to kind of bump up the reading piece. So I'd like to add some more to the word wall and look at kind of really focusing in on those sight words this week, both in guided groups as well as some full class mini lessons as well. Okay, so for math this week, a few different options. On Monday, I'd like to kind of re-explore, based on what we learned, this whole concept kind of collecting the math and the science with wind-powered toy objects. But I'd like the students to kind of have a little more restricted use of the materials to use, and then do a few little races where we look at the measurements and comparing the measurements and why one went farther than another and how things could change and how could they keep track of their results, and kind of looking at the documenting piece for it, and then as well as the non-standard measurement piece. So I'd like to go into doing some of that building piece on Monday. And then on Tuesday, I'm thinking after the assembly, I'd like to do the sound measurement provocation, which I have to show them up on the smartboard as something just quickly to discuss, but then going outside and looking for options to actually try out the sounds in the different containers and what do they notice and how does it compare, and just kind of giving a few different options with kind of that nature possibility. Now I don't know how far we'll get, so I think some of this may end up kind of sneaking into Wednesday, which is why I kind of put the Wednesday Thursday piece together. Okay, so as I said, I think part of what we do on Tuesday may kind of filter into Wednesday. So this could kind of be a bit of Tuesday, a bit of Wednesday, and a bit of Thursday. Kind of all mixed up together. But anyways, what I'd like to look at in this piece is kind of investigating sounds and looking at what happens when they add some different things. And I think what we want to look at is some things from the classroom as well as some other materials. So some will be from the classroom and some will be other materials. I've got things like pasta, beans, seeds, rice, crackers, kind of a variety of things. I was even thinking if I could get some sand, that might be neat. As well as kind of investigating like little blocks and things like that, and what happens as we fill them up, and what kind of sounds do they make, and when we use these sounds, there are certain sounds better if we're trying to portray maybe a happier thing or a sad or scary or peaceful. What kind of sounds, what do the sounds make us think, right? So kind of looking at that, and then I want to move into creating our own songs and kind of investigating the concept of the pattern in the songs, looking at the beats per line and how we can add up to 4, and as I said, investigating the moods and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and it probably will span at least 2, maybe even 3 days, depending, and I want to take it kind of slowly on to that next level so that kids kind of understand the connection between it, but we also look at, okay, how could you write it down? What would that look like? And that students can figure out kind of the best way to record it so that in theory they could pass that along to somebody and share it, and someone else would know what they were thinking. And in fact, eventually I think we might want to look at this whole idea of using 105 The Hive to share some of our music. So this could be kind of where we're going in terms of sharing the music. And then, assuming that things go according to plan, then on Friday, I want to pick back up on the concept of distance and look at kind of the fire drill problem. When we look at, okay, what are the closest exits, which exits are best, what's our best options, and creating a map. And this is where I'd also like to kind of introduce the whole concept of scratch to them, which also is going to need to lead to some playing from there too. Because I think that that playing piece is going to be important with that, to kind of figure out how it works in terms of the number of steps. But I also want them to explore. So depending on what the weather's like, we might be able to go outside, or if not in the classroom, to explore some different steps to different places. How many? Why does it vary from person to person? We can also grab and look at the pedometers to count the number of steps. So we can try some of those out to kind of count the number of steps, and then look at the kinds of rooms and things to add to our map. So what do we know about the maps, and maybe look at a few different maps so we get some kind of provocations from maps. And in fact, there is a Math Monsters one for maps too that may be worth looking at as well, so that we can get an idea of what should we add to our map and how can we do that. And that's where I'd like some students may want to use paper, pencil, markers, and others may want to actually try it in Scratch to create a map that would actually like work for students to actually see the steps as they happen. So kind of playing around with a few options. Okay, so I guess I didn't press record. I thought I did. So for the parents that come in this week, I think what we'll be looking at is that whole concept of exploring what's less and greater than a meter. I had actually planned on doing that last week, but then we tested out our cars and stuff and our toys, and they didn't take, that took a little bit longer than expected, so the parents kind of joined us for that piece. So this week we'll do this instead, and they can help show their parents how they can write down and sound out the names of the different things as they write them down, and we can kind of get that math and language combined so the parents can see how that's actually happening in the classroom and be involved in that process as well.